It is 1853, and the new Victorian asylum system is not a sanctuary, but a suffocating brick tomb.
You stand at the colossal wrought iron gates, the collar of your impeccably clean suit stiff against your neck. You pull a silver pocket watch from your vest, the ticking echoing against the newly laid brickwork. It is 1853, and the freshly passed Asylums Act mandates the construction of these massive fortresses across the countryside. You are a junior alienist, and to you, the suffocating tragedy unfolding below is nothing more than data in a leather ledger. Your polished leather shoes step away from the window as another wooden cart groans into the courtyard. The vehicle is overflowing with destitute adults, their hollow faces turned downward in raw exhaustion. Following the sweeping 1854 Vagrancy Act, local police routinely clear the London streets, packing your waiting room with starved beggars and syphilitic men entirely misdiagnosed as insane. You feel a dull ache behind your eyes from the sheer volume of wailing echoing up the stone stairwells. You retreat into the clinical sanctuary of the treatment wing, compulsively adjusting your stiff cuffs. Here, the horrors are neatly categorized. You observe the standard 1850s medical response to female hysteria, a specialized heavy wooden chair. An exhausted woman is strapped into the device, her knuckles white, before the attendants violently spin her at nauseating speeds until she completely loses consciousness. It is a purely mechanical cruelty. You document the resulting fainting spell in your ledger, your writing hand perfectly steady despite the chaos. Downstairs, the 1851 census data becomes a physical nightmare, revealing a terrifying spike in lunacy that forces administrators to cram 1,200 shivering adults into wards designed for only 400. You close your ledger, the heavy leather binding snapping shut like a vault. The air up here is sterile, but the administrative trap waiting in the offices above is far more dangerous. You climb the mahogany stairs to the aristocratic superintendent's quarters, aggressively rubbing your throbbing temples. Your lungs burn from the cloying, heavy scent of lavender forcefully pumped into the 1855 office to mask the suffocating stench of the dysentery wards directly below. Outside the 1852 reinforced glass windows, heavy iron grates rust and weep condensation into the thick, gray London fog. You sit at a polished oak desk, your fingers cramping painfully as you grip your fountain pen to sign document after document. The cruelty here is entirely bureaucratic. It takes a mere 2 signatures from male doctors under the 1858 legal framework to permanently trap completely sane women inside these damp walls for decades. You watch the ink dry, knowing their entire family dowries instantly transfer to their husbands upon admission. You feel a sickening churn in your stomach on Sundays. Wealthy visitors pay a single penny under the 1851 exhibition rules to walk these upper galleries, pointing at the terrified, shivering adults below as if touring a menagerie of broken beasts. To justify the extreme overcrowding, you invent absurd medical classifications. In your 1857 quarterly report, you officially categorize reading too many novels as a legitimate, debilitating cause for female insanity. It is a system designed to erase humanity. By 1859, the sheer, crushing volume of paperwork means a patient's entire identity is completely obliterated. You observe the exhausted men and women below, stripped of their names and reduced entirely to a single black ledger number, stamped onto their scratchy, unbleached canvas uniforms. But the pristine clinical illusion of your upper office cannot last. The paperwork must be delivered down into the freezing, unlit bowels of the pauper wings, where the true nightmare reigns. The pristine air vanishes. You are now Elias, a burly ward attendant suffocating in a coarse, sweat-stained uniform reeking of cheap tobacco and damp wool. Your calloused hands grip heavy iron keys that clank aggressively against your thigh. The reality down here is vile. You gag violently as your heavy boots slog across the porous wooden floors of the 1852 pauper wards. These decaying boards have permanently absorbed years of untreated human waste and stagnant water, emitting a toxic, eye-watering stench. During the annual 1855 inspection, your chest tightened with bitter resentment as the commissioners in lunacy merely toured the freshly scrubbed upper floors, deliberately ignoring this rotting basement. You march exhausted men past the insurmountable barrier of the 1850s strict segregation laws. It is a colossal 15-foot brick wall violently dividing male and female inmates into two completely isolated worlds of misery. Your muscles constantly ache from the sheer tension of keeping order. The sour smell of boiling cabbage and rotting onions physically assaults your nostrils inside the 1853 dining hall. You stand rigid, your knuckles white around a thick birch rod. You must ruthlessly enforce the 1854 silence rule, glaring at trembling adults who are strictly forbidden from making a single vocal noise during meals. They eat with crude spoons as forks are banned out of terror of mass riots. But your fragile control shatters when the sun sets. The complete absence of gas lighting in the pauper wings plunges the massive corridors into absolute, suffocating blackness. You stand paralyzed, navigating only by the horrific echoing sounds of grown men weeping and scratching at the peeling plaster. Your heart hammers violently against your ribs as you stare into the pitch-black entrance of Ward 4. It is midnight, and the 1856 superstition freezes your legs, the terrifying belief that these damp walls physically absorb the raw madness. And tonight, there is no escape. You step into the main block, your breath pluming in the stale air. The bitter winter of 1855 ravages the adult inmates, forcing them to huddle on rotting straw mattresses. You shiver violently under your coarse uniform, watching their breath turn to ice in cells completely devoid of fireplaces. To save on coal during the 1857 freeze, administrators ordered the pauper heating vents permanently sealed shut. Your stomach churns at the reality of the 1852 daily diet. Grown men desperately gnaw on hardened sawdust-mixed bread loaves, washed down with a single pint of weak beer. The hunger is so severe, you routinely catch exhausted adults hunting rats in the damp cellars. You wince, your muscles cramping. Your lower back aches terribly as you enforce the 1856 bathing ritual, forcing 50 unwashed patients through the exact same tub of freezing, gray, sludge-like water. You watch in grim horror as the 1856 water cure locks panicked adults into enclosed coffin-like bathtubs filled with icy water for hours to allegedly cool their inflamed brains. By 1853, the asylum pharmacy spends far more of its budget on heavy leather restraints and canvas straitjackets than on actual medicine or fresh bandages. It is a relentless grind. Your hands tremble as you confiscate rusty nails, scraping away the frantic tally marks desperate inmates carve into the 1856 plaster walls. During the 1858 recreation hour, exhausted adults aimlessly pace a barren mud courtyard, their bare feet blackened by soot raining down from nearby factory smokestacks. You even watch inmates barter their own teeth, pulled with rusty pliers, to corrupt guards for a single extra blanket in 1851. When the 1859 cholera panic hits, doctors forcibly purge inmates with toxic doses of castor oil, and the unbearable stench of the solitary confinement biohazard forces you to bury your face in a filthy rag. The bodies inevitably pile up, shifting the burden to the man waiting outside in the mud. The cold mud sucks violently at your boots. You are now Arthur, the Gravedigger, pushing a heavy wooden wheelbarrow through the freezing, relentless drizzle. Your calloused hands throb against the splintering wood handles, and your thin, soot-stained coat offers absolutely no protection against the biting moorland wind. The 1857 financial panic slashed the asylum budget so severely that you were forced to pry open and reuse the exact same cheap pine coffins for multiple adult burials. The dead house looms ahead in the thick London fog. You tightly cover your nose and mouth with a filthy rag, gagging as you navigate the wooden holding shed. An absurd 1859 law requires all deceased adult paupers to remain completely unburied on wooden slabs for a full 48 hours to ensure they are truly dead, filling your cramped workspace with rows of decaying bodies. The recent 1858 typhus outbreak thoroughly ravaged the lower wards, a massive tragedy the terrified staff secretly blames on a cursed shipment of contaminated wool blankets imported from a diseased prison ship. Your shoulder muscles scream in sheer agony as you drive your heavy iron spade into the earth. You dread digging near the eastern perimeter wall in 1857, where the soil is unnaturally black and foul-smelling from decades of discarded, infected medical waste slowly oozing into the water table. To survive on your miserable wages, you supplement your 1858 income by secretly harvesting and selling the shorn hair of deceased female inmates to local wig makers in the city. This grim black market thrives simply because an 1857 outbreak of lice recently forced attendants to mercilessly shave the heads of every woman inside, leaving massive piles of matted hair swept into the courtyard corners. Your boots sink deeper into the vile, sucking mud, your chest heaving with sheer exhaustion. But as the heavy night fog rolls across the barren moors, you realize the true horror is not what you put into the ground, but what refuses to stay buried.
You stand perfectly still, your breath catching painfully in your frozen throat. The silence of the moors is heavy, suffocating, and deeply wrong. You tighten your freezing grip on the splintered shovel, your tired eyes scanning the fog-drenched perimeter. You routinely discover that the shallow 1854 mass graves are violently disturbed overnight, not by human grave robbers, but by desperate, starving wild dogs roaming from the desolate moorland. Your stomach twists into tight, nauseating knots. You drop your heavy shovel and walk toward the crematorium shed, your leather boots crunching loudly over discarded black cinders. A dark, horrific 1853 administrative truth weighs heavily on your exhausted conscience. To save on exorbitant daily cremation costs, the asylum directors force you to sweep out the boiler grates, ensuring grieving families simply receive urns filled with common fireplace ash instead of their loved ones' actual remains. It is the ultimate silent erasure of a human life. You gaze up at the night sky, your eyes watering uncontrollably from the stinging, bitter wind. An obscure 1853 asylum bylaw strictly prohibits patients from looking directly at the moon, based on the absurd medical belief that lunar rays directly induce violent mania. Yet, here you are, bathed in its cold light, surrounded by the discarded adult victims of an 1858 legal clause that requires absolutely no police investigation for any accidental smothering during the violent application of a canvas straitjacket. The ground itself physically rejects this place. You stumble backward, your ankle twisting sharply as the soft earth gives way beneath your heel. An enormous 1859 burial plot continually sinks inward, the wet soil groaning loudly under your shifting weight. You stare down into the yawning black sinkhole in sheer terror, realizing it reveals an ancient, forgotten plague pit beneath the asylum. The massive brick foundation is slowly, inevitably collapsing into the horrific rot of the past. The asylum does not just break the living, it is entirely swallowed by the dead.